Okay, so we're on lesson number 299 of a workbook of A Course in Miracles. And remember, we are also on during the day before we do this lesson, allowing our mind to be opened by the contemplation that we're given to read, entitled The Real World, wherein which we begin to recognize that there's a counterpart for the world and each thought we think we are thinking in the world we're living. There's a counterpart, there's a counter world that's right there. Jesus said the kingdom of heaven is at hand. It's right here and you see it not. It's the same idea until you allow your mind to be healed, and let's use this word for a second because it's not really true, until you allow your mind to be replaced by the mind that is already joined within the kingdom, and begin to see and look out from the spiritual, let's call it, the vision that comes from the reopening of your spiritual eye. And what's interesting is I don't like to use the word spiritual because it becomes a modifier, meaning, but in this sense, it is a modifier. It modifies the difference between the body's eyes and the spiritual eye. And then when the Course was originally given to Helen, that was how she was introduced to what Jesus was talking about. We have our spirit as our light, our real life. What we are as spirit has the ability to utilize its eye. The eye of the spirit, the spiritual eye. Our body has body's eyes. When we utilize the body's eyes, we get the result of seeing based on thought that we're a body. When we allow our mind to shift, we begin to see through the utilization of the light of the single self that we're joined with through the Holy Spirit. We begin to see in a new way. And as you begin to utilize this new sight, these glimpses into reality, and today we're getting a glimpse into, let's call it, eternal holiness. As you begin to get glimpses, and these glimpses become more and more available, and because they are glimpses into what is eternal and infinite, they are unlike what we previously thought about what we were seeing in the world. Now, when we begin to get these glimpses of the eternal, what we begin to recognize as we utilize, say, disciplines or work Jesus called A Course in Miracles, through the text, through the theoretical framework, as we begin to experience these moments and understand what they are in relationship to, let's call it, the non-moments of space and time, wherein which we seem to live this sort of linear existence as bodies in the world, as we begin to see and experience the reality that the vision, the spiritual eye brings to us, we begin to withdraw our allegiance to what our body's eye sees, because the convincing nature of the experience that occurs within your heart and mind when you do have these glimpses into reality begin to, in a sense, prove more useful and valuable to your own peace of mind and happiness than the way you previously viewed yourself and evaluated yourself as a body within a world of space and time, attempting to achieve an outcome and headed toward death, no matter what seems to happen. Now, one of the things, and being around and speaking to people, one of the things, and I'm glad that I approve of the way the words Jesus used in this lesson. Eternal holiness abides in me. Okay? Now, I would be willing to bet that there is not a single person who has not had, and as Jesus calls this, everyone has had an experience of light at some time. I would bet there's not a single person who hasn't had a transcendent moment in their life when all of a sudden time stood still and the wholeness of reality engulfed their heart and mind, and wherein which they had an experience that they could not understand nor could they explain. And many times it comes in conjunction with symbols within your world that you have given meaning to that are in line with, let's say, what this course aims to teach, holiness and love. Okay? What begins to happen where the mind is untrained and does not have access, let's say, to something like the theoretical framework of A Course in Miracles and the utilization of its lessons, it begins to think the holiness is in the form that it seems to be experiencing, much like love. So some things occur, okay, such as if you were an altar boy or a choir boy, and there was a particular mass, like midnight mass or high mass that you said, and something happened, and for a moment you let yourself be caught up in everything that was occurring without the need to define it or understand it. When you free your mind and you don't defend yourself, major experiences come that allow you a glimpse into something that is beyond the world where attack and defense is occurring. Okay? Now, my holiness is far beyond my own ability to understand or know. Of course so. Of course not. It's beyond your own ability to understand and know, because alone and isolated in a world wherein which you think you're separate, no holiness or wholeness exists, because separation is what the ego is attempting to enforce on your experience, and what the body's eyes gives witness to. Okay? And you can't understand wholeness or holiness in a condition of separation. That does not mean this is what it gets to. And I can know my holiness. Yes, you, as you are right here and right now, can know that holiness as you let go of your ideas of what makes holiness, surrender totally give up your need to understand, give up your need to define what holiness is. It's far beyond my own ability to know or understand, because it takes me leaving my definition of what I am as a self or a self-concept in a world that is very well guarded by the definitions we give everything. You understand? The world is guarded and protected and held in its place by the definitions we give it that we refuse to let go of. So we experience holiness in a particular situation associated with the situation in the world and think that that's where holiness comes from, in an attempt to replicate and duplicate the holiness that we experienced in that moment of time. We experience the failure of our ability to duplicate the experience, and we attribute it to unworthiness rather than recognizing that in that moment when we did experience holiness, something else was going on that we can't understand. And that's what needs to be replicated in your mind, the defenselessness that occurred in the moment when you allowed everything to exist as whole and not separate, so that you too could be part and parcel of the everythingness of the nature of reality, beyond the need to hold yourself in separation as a human being, attempting to accomplish something alone, and accomplish something in the face of all odds against you because of the nature of the need to defend yourself from everything that comes with the perception of separation that produces, our experiences here in the world. My holiness is far beyond my own ability to understand, yet God, my Father who created it, acknowledges my holiness as His. Okay, if God is everything and holiness is His, then everything is holy, so therefore you are too, because you can't be separate from everything. It's really that simple. But you can't know yourself as holy if you attempt to hold yourself separate from that which you think is not holy. Because those definitions are what limit you in your experience of the beingness, of the everythingness of your own true nature. Our will together understands it, and our will together knows that it is so, yes. And the only time you're ever in doubt is when you're in doubt about yourself, because you're utilizing the body's eyes to identify yourself as a being in a world of separation, wherein which these other beings and you are all in competition for the same sort of scarce resources, and have to live by toil in order to survive only until the moment when you die. That has nothing to do with who you are as God created you, and in the moments when you experience your own holiness and the holiness of the entirety of reality. You know that for certain. And without something like A Course in Miracles or some sort of help from someone who has gone through this process, we would wander aimlessly, living in this comparative nature in which there doesn't seem to be any way out. And yet all the constant necessity to compare allows the ego to thrive, wherein our true experiences are when we release ourselves from that, because we're being told that the eternal holiness abides in us. This is a holiness that can't be lost, so it can't be found in a world where things are partial, where it's temporal in nature, where things are come and go, where things are passing, where things die, where things are come to be born and to die, where things change rapidly with very little sort of influence whatsoever. My holiness is not of me. It is not mine to be destroyed by sin. And this is brilliant, because it's telling you it is not mine to suffer from attack. Illusions can obscure it, but cannot put out its radiance nor dim its light. Remember, the two worlds don't meet. In our mind, we think they do, but they don't. Light or darkness cannot coexist. Only one or the other is true. And if your reality is a reality of light without opposite, then that is what's true about you, and everything else is just a dream, but cannot touch the light that you have always been and still are even now. It stands forever perfect and untouched. In it are all things healed, for they remain as you created them. And I can know my holiness. Don't let anybody tell you you cannot know and experience your own holiness. I think minds and hearts that are unprepared like a different sort of spiritual discipline, wherein which it's taught that you can't know your holiness because it's beyond you and you don't exist. If you don't exist and you couldn't know your holiness, I assure you exist in the kingdom as whole and perfect, and the holiness that God created you in and as remains as pristine and as magnificent as it was in the instant that God, in his eternal and infinite mind, thought of sharing this with you, his son. For holiness itself created me, and I can know my source, because it is your will that you be known. And what is God's will is our will, because we share one will. So when it's your will to know God wholly, it is God's will to meet you in a space and time beyond space and time, wherein which you can recognize who you are and know holiness that you were created to be has zero to do with anything in this world, because it doesn't. Neither do you. And the more we undergo these experiences of forgiveness within our own heart and mind, the more we understand that this world has no reality, nor can it touch who we are. And as we participate in the plan for salvation, we can feel and see the nearness of the beginning of the end, of the necessity for this to continue as a classroom in which we continue through repetition to learn that which is already true and cannot be repeated, because it is singular, whole, and perfect, and eternal.